how tech solved the murder that no one could crack. Caroline Crouch, only 20 years old, was brutally killed inside her own home. Her husband, Haralambos Anagnostopoulos, was tied up and blindfolded with duct tape. Their 11-month-old baby girl had a gun pointed at her head. Even the family's husky, Roxy, was killed. At first, it looked like a violent home invasion. For weeks, no one could figure out who was behind it. But then, technology uncovered the truth, revealing a shocking twist no one could have imagined. Caroline Crouch was born on July 12, 2001 in Athens to her Filipino mother, Susan Della Cuesta, and her British father, David Crouch, a retired engineer. When she was just 8 years old, her family moved to the island of Alonissos, a quiet coastal place where Caroline grew up surrounded by the sea. She loved the outdoors, especially swimming and scuba diving, and embraced the beachside life that shaped her childhood. As a teenager, Caroline's life took a dramatic turn. At only 16 years old, she met a 27-year-old commercial helicopter pilot named Haralambos Anagnostopoulos, better known as Babis, during a Good Friday parade in 2017. Babis was charming, financially stable, and seemed like the man of her dreams. He even flew his helicopter over her school to impress her. For Caroline, like many young girls, the idea of eloping with her first love felt like a fairy tale. 2 years later, in July 2019, the couple married in Portugal, by which time they were deeply in love and ready to start their future together. They soon settled into a rented 2-story maisonette in Glycanera, a quiet suburb on the outskirts of Athens. Their bond grew even stronger when they welcomed their daughter Lydia the following year. Only days before Caroline's tragic death, the couple had bought a plot of land with plans to build their dream home. Caroline's parents had gifted her 50,000 euros to help with the purchase, while she and Babis kept around 10,000 euros in cash at home to cover construction costs. At that time, many Greeks preferred to keep cash at home rather than in banks, which was seen as unstable. Caroline, still so young, believed she was living her dream: a loving husband, a baby daughter, and the promise of a beautiful home by the sea. But behind the picture of happiness, tragedy was waiting. That perfect life was about to shatter. In the early hours of May 11, 2021, around 4:30 a.m., chaos struck the quiet home in Glycanera. Babis was shaken awake as 3 masked men forced their way inside. Armed with pistols, they quickly overpowered him, tying his hands and legs before covering his eyes and mouth with duct tape. Caroline, just 20 years old, was their next target. Terrified, she tried to protect their 11-month-old daughter, who had woken up crying during the struggle. The intruders, speaking with Greek and Albanian accents, demanded to know where the money was hidden. Desperate to protect his family, Babis revealed the unusual hiding spot where they had kept all of their saved cash, inside a Monopoly board game box. The men seized the money, but they weren't satisfied. They ransacked the house, searching for jewelry and anything else of value. But their greed turned into cruelty. The family begged for mercy, yet the intruders pressed harder. Babis, blindfolded and tied, could only listen as Caroline screamed. And at one horrifying moment, a gun was pointed at their baby's head. Struggling against the restraints, he tried to fight back, but the rope around his neck was pulled so tight that he drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally came to, the house had fallen silent. The intruders were gone. All Babis could hear were the heartbreaking cries of his daughter. Nearly 30 minutes later, still bound, he managed to reach his phone and dial emergency services using only his nose, pleading for help and forcing out the words, "Robbers came in." An hour and a half had passed since the intruders had broken into Babis and Caroline's home. First responders arrived around 6 a.m., rushing up the front steps to what would become a scene of horror. Inside, the living room and kitchen were completely destroyed. Drawers were pulled open and emptied, clothing and belongings scattered across the floor. Among the mess lay the open Monopoly box, the same one where Babis and Caroline had hidden their savings. On the living room couch, a security camera had been ripped from the wall, its memory card missing. Hanging from the staircase was the body of the family's 7-month-old husky Roxy, strangled with her own leash. Babis was found on the bedroom floor, his eyes and mouth covered in duct tape and his hands and feet restrained behind his back. On the bed lay Caroline, face down, while their infant daughter cried and waved her tiny hands beside her, trying to wake her mother. Caroline was pronounced dead at the scene. Their daughter, although visibly distressed, appeared unharmed. When Babis was freed from his restraints and saw his wife's lifeless body, he went into visible shock. Officers immediately secured the infant and began questioning him. From Babis's account and the state of the crime scene, investigators concluded that 4 men were involved, 3 who entered the house and 1 who kept watch. The police reconstructed the sequence of events. The intruders first approached through a dirt road to the rear entrance. Failing to break in there, they removed security pins from a basement window to gain access. Once inside, they murdered Roxy, the family husky, using her own leash. The 3 men then made their way to the main bedroom, woke Babis and Caroline, and demanded their savings. After ransacking the house and taking the money from the Monopoly box, they smothered Caroline with a pillow. Since Babis was drifting in and out of consciousness, the intruders may have assumed he was dead and left the scene, believing there were no witnesses. Forensic examiners later revealed that Caroline's death was not instant. The 20-year-old endured a brutal attack that lasted around 6 minutes. Bruises across her body indicated signs of struggle, while marks on her lips and tongue suggested the possible use of sharp objects. Thankfully, no evidence of sexual assault was found. Despite the extensive damage to the house, the intruders left behind almost no evidence. The only item recovered by first responders was the hood of one of the attackers. According to Babis's account, the hood likely fell off during his attempts to resist. It may have been a small clue in such a horrifying crime, but that single piece of evidence gave Babis the first glimpse of one of the perpetrators. Based on the details Babis provided, a sketch of one of the intruders was created, depicting an overweight, dark-skinned, tall individual. Despite his disorientation, Babis was also able to identify the firearms used, a black pistol and a silver Colt. Investigators later confirmed that the intruders had escaped with 10,000 euros in cash and jewelry, valued at around 20,000 euros. Police concluded that the attack had been carried out by professional criminals who had observed the family and waited for the right moment to strike. A police spokesperson described the crime as brutal and violent, characterizing it as the work of someone with a lack of empathy and a strong antisocial personality. As the investigation unfolded, speculation ran rampant. If money was the motive, why had the intruders resorted to murder? Some suggested the attackers might have been under the influence of drugs and unable to control themselves, while others wondered if Caroline had seen or recognized them. Another key theory focused on Caroline herself. Being a trained black belt kickboxer, she may have resisted and fought back, forcing the intruders to silence her to maintain control. It was also speculated that her screams may have drawn attention when the intruders held her 11-month-old daughter at gunpoint. While all of this remained speculation, investigators were certain about one thing: the attack had been premeditated. The intruders seemed to know the couple kept cash inside the house, something they wouldn't have discovered by chance. Believing the gang may have received a tip, police began questioning Babis and Caroline's close circle, searching for anyone who might have shared information about the family's finances. At the same time, investigators collected and reviewed security camera footage from nearby homes and businesses. In the recordings, they spotted a dark-colored vehicle and a motorcycle driving slowly around the neighborhood that morning, raising suspicions that the killers might have been scouting the area before striking. On May 14, 2021, 3 days after the murder, Caroline Crouch was laid to rest on the Greek island of Alonissos, the place where she grew up and the home her parents loved. Her funeral was held at Agia Paraskevi Church, where hundreds of mourners gathered in silence. In a gesture of respect, shops across the island closed for the day. During the service, Babis paid an emotional tribute to his wife, saying he felt lucky to have met her, luckier that she had loved him, and even luckier that she had become the mother of his daughter. He added that their baby girl would grow up never remembering her mother, and that Caroline, the joy of life, as he described her, would always remain close to him through their child. While the island was grieving, investigators were just beginning to focus on one crucial question: who was behind Caroline's murder? And what they uncovered would only raise more questions than answers. But before we dive into the shocking details, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our content. Not long after Caroline's funeral, police detained a suspect they believed might be connected to the murder. For days, investigators questioned him intensely, convinced they had finally found the person responsible. But after thorough interrogation and evidence review, it became clear he had no involvement. He wasn't their man, and the real killer was still out there. 3 officers from the Athens homicide squad were officially demoted for mishandling the investigation. From there, police redirected their efforts toward a well-known Albanian organized crime group operating in the area. At first, investigators drew up a list of nearly 100 potential suspects. That list was slowly reduced to just 10 individuals already flagged on Greece's notorious Red List, a database of the country's most dangerous and active criminals. Mugshots of these 10 men were quietly shown to Babis, though investigators refused to disclose any further information about them. Still, none of the faces matched. The investigation dragged on, and with every passing day, the public's frustration grew. Athens residents felt increasingly unsafe, especially as racially motivated crimes had recently spiked. Even a large cash reward offered by authorities brought in no meaningful leads. Despite constant police work, there were still no fingerprints, no DNA, no physical evidence of any kind, making the case feel less like a typical home invasion and more like a puzzle that refused to be solved. Caroline's family remained grateful for the police's continued pursuit of justice. Babis, too, told journalists that he wouldn't wish this nightmare on anyone. He publicly supported the investigation and kept Caroline's story alive by speaking to the media whenever he could. He even stayed active on social media, answering questions and thanking the public for their support while the search for her killers continued. Yet behind the scenes, investigators were about to uncover something that would shift the entire direction of the case. The breakthrough came on June 17th, 37 days after Caroline was murdered. A small memorial service was being held for her on Alonissos, and among the mourners, people noticed a detective standing quietly at the back. When the ceremony ended, investigators approached Babis discreetly and asked him to accompany them to Athens. They told him they had new information and needed him to identify a man. Babis, unaware of what was coming, agreed. By this point, investigators had followed numerous leads and re-examined key details from the night of the murder, and several things simply didn't add up. Babis claimed the intruders entered through the basement window, yet the window was far too small for anyone with the large, heavy build he had described. He said the house had been violently ransacked, but neighbors reported hearing none of the chaos such an attack would create, only the couple's puppy crying in distress. No shouts, no struggle, not even the baby crying. And inside the home, investigators found no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing left behind. Even the logic of the alleged confrontation didn't sit right. Why would armed intruders tie up the man and then choose to fight the woman? And on top of all these contradictions, tech finally stepped in, revealing the truth behind the murder no one could crack. Babis had told investigators that the intruders removed the memory card from the living room security camera during the break-in, but the camera's data showed something very different. The card had been removed at 1:20 a.m., hours before the supposed attackers ever entered the house. Caroline's smartwatch provided another crucial insight. At 3:58 a.m., her pulse indicated she was asleep. By 4:05 a.m., it had risen sharply, signaling severe physical and mental stress. And at 4:11 a.m., her heart had stopped. This was well before the time Babis claimed the murder had occurred. Data from Babis's fitness app also contradicted his story, showing that he was moving around the house during the time he said he was tied up. Police even attempted to reenact how he had supposedly dialed emergency services with the duct tape on, but no one could do it. Further revelations came from Caroline herself. She had attempted to book a hotel for herself and her daughter that night, and a text message to her friend revealed that she had threatened to leave Babis. It was now clear who was responsible. Babis was the one behind it all. But what no one could understand was why he would murder Caroline when their life appeared perfect to everyone. When Babis first entered Caroline's life, she believed she had found her perfect match. She openly shared her happiness with her family, confident in their love. A year and a half later, Babis proposed. At the time, Caroline was still underage, turning 18 just 3 days later. The couple exchanged vows and settled in Nera, living what appeared to the outside world as a happy, modern life. Caroline pursued her college studies in Athens, while Babis continued his work as a pilot. Their social media profiles reinforced this image of joy, showing a couple seemingly in love and thriving. Yet behind the carefully curated posts, Caroline's diary painted a far darker picture. She frequently questioned her relationship with Babis, documenting arguments and moments of fear. In 2019, she wrote about intense fights and even contemplated leaving him, considering staying with her sister to escape the strain. Over time, Babis's behavior had grown controlling and manipulative, revealing a side of him hidden from everyone else. The roots of Babis's control went back to their unconventional wedding. Instead of a traditional Greek ceremony with family and friends, they chose to elope, a decision that seemed romantic to others but left Caroline feeling isolated. At home, Babis controlled all the money and made most of the decisions. Caroline, still a student with little income, had to rely on him, even when her mother sent her money, which Babis often took for himself. In her diary, she wrote, "I love Babis so much that I can't leave him, even though this relationship hurts me." Caroline also described moments of emotional turmoil and desperation. She wanted to leave, but felt trapped by her pregnancy. "I stayed with him so my daughter would not grow up without her two parents," she wrote. Another entry, dated July 2020, when her daughter was just a month old, read, "Today, my little one is a month old. It's also the day I told Babis I want to leave. I feel awful." Caroline even referenced a house in Chalondri, Athens, hinting at her desire for freedom and a fresh start. What seemed like a dream life from the outside was, in reality, a spiral of fear, manipulation, and isolation for Caroline. Her diary, combined with phone records from the hours before her death, revealed heated arguments and a relationship far from the perfect romance the world had seen. Beneath the surface of smiles and social media posts lay a life that had become unbearable, a life that would end tragically. The investigators finally confronted Babis, telling him he was now the prime suspect in Caroline's murder. They presented him with overwhelming, irrefutable evidence showing how his story no longer matched reality. After 8 hours of questioning, Babis broke down. He began to confess, but even then his confession was filled with excuses and twisted details. He claimed that everything started on May 10th, the night before the murder, during an argument about their daughter. According to him, Caroline wanted to take the baby and leave, something he said caused him to lose control because the child was his whole life. He alleged that Caroline threw the baby into the cot and told him to get out of the house, and that she became physical, pushing and punching him. From there, Babis couldn't control himself anymore. He strangled Caroline, pressed a pillow over her face with his full body weight, and killed her. A cold-blooded murder committed right in front of their 11-month-old daughter. He admitted that afterward he thought about disposing of Caroline's body, but realized it wasn't possible. So he turned to another plan, framing someone else. He staged a fake home invasion. To make it look believable, he killed their dog, Roxy, placed his own child beside Caroline's body, and tied himself up with rope and duct tape. Babis told investigators that he deserved punishment and that he owed an apology to everyone he had hurt. Still, he tried to shift some blame onto Caroline, saying he became unstable and aggressive after the birth of their daughter, a child who would now grow up with no mother and who would never truly know the woman who loved her. The case would later be known as the murder that fooled the world. Babis had grown so confident that he would get away with it that he didn't even bother destroying the very evidence that exposed him. In May 2022, Babis Anagnostopoulos was officially found guilty of every major charge against him. The court convicted him of the premeditated murder of his wife, Caroline Crouch, as well as animal cruelty for killing their dog, Roxy. He was also found guilty of perverting the course of justice, lying to authorities, and giving false testimony because he staged a fake robbery, tied himself up, and spent weeks misleading police. During the trial, the prosecutor rejected his claim that the murder happened in the heat of the moment, saying he acted in a calm and controlled psychological state, proving it was planned. His lawyers tried to ask for lighter punishment, but the court refused. A mixed panel of judges and jurors unanimously sentenced him to life in prison for the murder, plus 11 years and 6 months for killing the dog and obstructing justice, along with a €21,000 fine. In September 2023, his appeal was rejected and the full sentence was confirmed. He eventually dropped any further appeals, meaning he will serve the entire sentence. Many people saw this verdict as an important moment in the fight against femicide, and psychologists in the trial described Babis as a controlling, narcissistic man, someone who tried to hide his crime but could not escape the truth. Now that you've heard the whole story, what do you think was the biggest red flag in Babis's personality? The one that should have raised serious alarm? And if you were in Caroline's place, could you have spotted someone like him early on? Or do these behaviors only become obvious later in a relationship? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. Caroline's case is a chilling reminder that sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us the worst. And believe it or not, there are even darker stories. I recommend watching our playlist, When Love Kills, where we uncover more shocking tales of relationships that turn deadly. Thank you for watching.